So
Oh, go
take a
ahead.
break.
I'll be
Also,
right back.
yes, take 5. May, thank you for being here for all of our conversations and tuning in. We only have 3 subcommittee members for this particular subcommittee meeting, Ruth being one of them. James is another one who messaged us and he's running a few minutes behind, so he might not show up until 2:05, maybe 2:10. And then also Irene, who was on an earlier call this morning. She needed to transfer to her call and to her car, take the call from the road. So it might take a moment for us to achieve quorum. So hang on. We'll get going when we've got our folks with us. Hi, Irene.
Hi, Megan.
Long time no see.
I know, right? It's funny.
Oh, no.
I'm here on the road, but I'll be stable in a few minutes.
Excellent. Ruth is on a Zoom marathon Friday, so she just needed to take a quick break. She'll be back, and James is running a few minutes behind. So we'll get going.
All right.
Do you think Camille and Tessa, do you think I can go ahead and get going? Oh, here's James.
Hi, James.
Hi, I'm here.
Here earlier than expected. Welcome.
I think whenever you're ready, Megan, you can give another moment if you want. But I think you can get started with those early slides and Ruth will be joining us.
I will talk us through the early slides and
Thank you.
task force members take a 7th inning stretch on your Friday afternoon because we're gonna dig into some heavy content. So welcome, folks. This is a meeting of the California Agricultural Land Equity Task Force Goal 4 Subcommittee. Goal 4 is focused on secure land tenure. This is a new subcommittee established at the most recent August task force meeting and our 5th subcommittee meeting of this week. So we're very happy to have you all here. We are scheduled until 4 p.m. My name is Megan Wiley. I am with California State University, Sacramento, and I provide facilitation and staff support to the task force. I am joined by my colleagues from California Strategic Growth Council, Camille Frazier in the room, and Tessa Salzman online. Before we begin, I would like to remind folks that the California Agricultural Land Equity Task Force, or Task Force, was established in the California Budget Act of 2022 via Assembly Bill 179. They are a 13-member appointed independent body directed to submit a report by January 1st, 2026 to the Legislature and Governor that includes a set of policy recommendations on how to address the agricultural land equity crisis. For the past almost 2 years now, task force members are working to prepare and finalize this report of recommendations by this deadline. The report of recommendations is being developed following 2 years of meetings, site visits, guest speakers, presentations, and community engagement sessions across California. It's a very robust body of research and knowledge being gathered to draft the contents that is contained there in the report, and we are excited to continue advancing these ideas together today. And before we launch, I will just take a moment to review our standard meeting participation guidelines that are applicable to everyone joining today, whether it is task force members, staff, or members of the public, invited guest speakers, etc. In all of our meetings, we respect diverse perspectives and encourage diverse perspectives, inclusive participation, and we all agree to use courteous language. So we request that all speakers be respectful, considerate, and on topic. Again, this afternoon, we are focused on Goal 4. So together, we create a safe, respectful, and inclusive space for meaningful discussion. We have an official public comment process. There is a form you can fill out online. You can fill out a separate form for each item. Today, we have 2 comment opportunities, one at the end of the task force working session, and then a general public comment at the end of the day where folks are welcome to comment on anything related to task force business outside of just Goal 4 conversation. But if you're joining us online, it's a little clunky to fill out this form for such a short meeting. So you're welcome to just use your raised hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom tool. And that way we know you would like to jump in the conversation queue, at which point staff will indicate it's time for you to unmute your microphone and share your comments. We do request you stick to a 2-minute time limit, and I'm happy to help keep on track with that. Your raised hand icon is somewhere in the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. Maybe it's showing up as a raised hand, or maybe it's under reactions. Poke around, you'll find it. You'll also see that there is a chat available, but really that is just for us to share any technical support needs if we have to with task force members or members of the public. For all intents and purposes, the conversation must be kept in our room here, our virtual room. What is the plan? The plan is to spend the next 1 hour and 54 minutes talking about things related to, oh, I typed this wrong. It's goal 4. Sorry. Review of feedback received related to goal 4 from the August ALTF Agricultural Land Equity Task Force meeting. So we actually have quite a few slides to talk through. We're going to review things that were, feedback received and that was already incorporated into your draft report, and then feedback received that requires further discussion. So that's that third bullet here. Second bullet, review and discuss draft goals and sub goals. And then before we close out of our working session, as always, we'll review action items, assign follow-up tasks and deadlines. And then we will reserve space at the end for general public comment. Okay, quick roll call to establish quorum. When I say your name, task force members, please come off mute and say hello or present. Task force member James Nakahara.
Present.
Member Ruth Dahlquist Willard.
Present.
Member Irene De Baracua.
Present.
Quorum is established. All subcommittee members are present.
Megan, we also have Leah.
Leah, welcome. I'm sorry, Leah is a new addition to goal 4. Good to have you with us. Task force member Leah Schwartzman, please say hello for the record.
Present.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. So let's jump into the working session. Tessa, I believe, is going to get us started with reviewing content, but Tessa and Camille will kind of tag team components of this portion. So first we'll talk about feedback that you all collected and gave in August, and next steps to incorporate or not incorporate, get some direction from you all. If we have time today, we also wanted to touch base on the order of recommendations or the sub goals that are collected within that goal 4 umbrella, and discuss scope and level of detail of each of those. So just hold those in mind as we talk through all of these various pieces. Okay, let's get started. Tessa.
Wonderful. Thank you. Hi, everybody. So you might be recognizing this format now if you've been in a couple other subcommittee meetings this week. But we want to just start out. We have a couple slides to do a quick review of some of the feedback that you all shared in the August meeting that felt pretty direct, concrete, and easy to just implement. So here's a quick review of some of those edits. I know the numbers are not easy to follow, so I'm just going to pull this up. So this first one is 4.2, which the recommendation there, or the suggestion from you all there, was to revise the title. And so we switched the title to correct negative policy impacts without compromising the original purpose of the law. So now I'm referencing these, the initial revisions document that you all received before this meeting, I believe last week. So just noting that title was updated. Of course, feel free to comment on any of this along the way if it feels necessary, but just wanting to draw your attention to these major changes. Next is 4.2 GI. So specifically, that refers to the Irrigated Lands Regulatory Program. And we added some language requiring water quality conditions to engage in outreach, coalitions, to engage in outreach and provide TA to priority producers. That was included. Moving on down to V, which looks at pest management policies and regulations. Made a couple of suggested updates to that section as well to ensure translated study materials and calling out more explicitly culturally appropriate materials and support to address language barriers. And finally, I think that VI is inaccurate there, but essentially moving local zoning into 4.3 and out of 4.2. So we did a little bit of reorganization there.
So this is the shorthand on the screen, but
Yeah.
when and if helpful, I'm ready to pull up the initial revisions document if anybody wanted to look at the full text. So just say the word.
I was just about to text that. Like,
Okay.
please. Yeah, please. If it's easier to just throw the link in chat. So, or there we go. Okay, thank you.
And Ruth, did you want to say something too?
Yeah, is there any version of this that highlights the new text so we can easily see where the changes were made, or like a track changes document? Or is it all just a clean copy?
The track changes document, I believe. So we could send that out. These tables are essentially trying to do some version of that, but I know it's
Right.
the easiest to follow.
And yeah, so there is not a tracked change. You do not have a track changes version of this document. You only have this clean one that
Right.
adopts the recommendations from the August meeting. We can though always provide that if that's helpful. That's good feedback to have.
Yep. And these are initial changes with the acknowledgement that these conversations are happening in subcommittees. We'll still be looking at this working group or at this chapter or goal through working groups as well to get that community input and interagency feedback all integrated as well. So just to keep that in mind too, that some of this text will be updated again.
Can you remind us of the original title?
Oh, yes, it was. It was address inequitable policy consequences while respecting the intention of the law. So slightly different.
Boy, I like that first language better.
Yeah, I do too. Because it's not,
Okay.
it's negative is so general, right? It's really the inequities that we're concerned about.
Yeah, good point.
And there's an agree from Leah. So let's Megan,
Let's
maybe
go back.
do you mind either creating, like, we can type somewhere just so people can see the language in front of them. I don't know if that's a possibility, whether it's just a Word doc or something like that. Let's get that title right so you all are more comfortable with it.
You want it back to the original title?
Yeah, it sounds like it.
So the concern was it was too long or it sounded too jargony?
Too jargony was the comment.
I think it's equally jargony either. I don't think it's really jargony. I don't see jargon in here, but I don't really see the difference there in terms of how much jargon there is.
Yeah. Okay, so
I
let's
don't think there's a way we can simplify the language beyond, like, there's just a certain amount of complexity that this subtopic is dealing with. And I think, yeah, being clear in the title, like that older, the former title, I'm not saying there's not like a third answer, but like the former title fits better to me.
Okay.
Because this implies that, yeah, I just think it fits better.
Okay.
Not to belabor a point, sorry.
totally, that's great feedback. Let's just switch it back. I don't know that you need to do that in this document, Megan. We can just make a clear note in the notes
Yep.
we're taking and just switch it
It's
on back.
captured here to revert to the original title.
Yeah, that's easy. So then I think you can keep this up, Megan, but do you guys want to see the other edits in this document too, or shall we move on?
II was one of the edits, right? FII or
It's 4.2G and then II.
2G. Aye.
It was the requirements for water quality coalitions, right?
Yep,
Yes.
that looks like number 3 and 4. Yep.
I'm fine with those recommendations as long as the resources part is there, so it's fine. But those water quality coalitions are entirely funded by member fees. So to get more resources and do more work, they have to charge their members more, including priority producers. So it's important to recognize they have no funding from the state, like any central funding, to go towards those activities. And so if maybe that could be even called out more specifically, like provide them with resources other than member fees or something like that. Otherwise, the priority producers and everybody else has their fees go up to support the translation and the technical assistance. I mean, what if we even added a bullet point, identify a stable source of funding for irrigated lands, technical assistance?
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm just looking at, okay, so that's in addition to ensuring that the coalitions are doing engagement with priority producers and land stewards,
Right,
essentially providing funding so that they can do that.
right,
Yeah, without charging those members. Okay,
right.
got it. Mhm. And then we were looking at V as well, pest management policies. Ensure translated study materials for certification programs. So how is this language looking?
I think that's great.
Okay. Wonderful. Any
What's
other
the
comments?
highlighted language we're looking at? Sorry, I got pulled away. I was looking at I have like
No worries.
13 windows
It's
open right now.
V, pest management policies and regulations.
Research, technical assistance, training on ground, agroecological pesticide alternatives. Perfect. Culturally appropriate. Yeah, on board. Thumbs up.
Great. And then I think the last one on that first slide that you guys saw was moving local zoning like recommendations and content to 4.3. So that's what we did. I think that was a bit more of a update kind of throughout.
Yeah, it used to be, there was a zoning, like, there was a 6, VI. That was about zoning, so that now is no longer there and it's been embedded, those same ideas have just been embedded under 4.3.
Wonderful. Great. So then we can, the next slide, which we can pull up. Oh, you have it right there, Megan. Nice. 4.4b, the feedback was that this one was very important. Let's scroll down to see which one that was. Develop mechanisms that allow tenants to retain the monetary value associated with improvements made to leased land. So this needs legal review, and we're just noting that that is in progress. That's kind of in the process with other legal questions that we had. And then the last suggestion that is on that previous slide there was about making a recommendation about increasing capacity of the CDFA Farm Equity Program. And so that is now 4.1 in this section. And that will come up again in conversations later today.
And can you show us the text? Oh, thanks. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I wonder if we can flag this for a larger conversation with the whole task force at the meeting. Primarily just like this is the first recommendation we've had that creates a direct benefit for one of the task force members agencies, like a codified, like this would improve CDFA's equity office. And I know we had conversations the other day about this was for goal 3 that came up around the land observatory and or a land monitoring department. And I think we should, if there is going to be like resourcing an agent, like if we're talking about like broad resourcing in a general term, I think that's fine. But I think if we're talking about a very specific department getting funded or increased in capacity, like I think we need to have a conversation about, do we want, like, what would live at the CDFA Farmer Equity Office and what would live all these other capacities that we talked about getting filled through the Land Observatory or whatever that kind of floating institution is that we've talked about creating.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it, but I do think we should like have it open for discussion.
I agree, because I didn't feel like there was consensus about that at the last meeting. And
Yeah.
also people have now seen the Ag Ombuds presentation, or some people have. And I think there's a lot of room for more discussion around that. But I support this kind of recommendation for sure, but it'd be great to have the full task force discuss it.
Same.
Great. Well, just
I
to
think
say that we do
also-
have some slides on both of those
Okay.
a bit further on. So we actually want to have that conversation with you guys first and then
Great.
to the full task force as needed.
That sounds great. And one thing I would say on this I-41 AI bullet point is staff member to help farmers comply with regulations. That needs to be distinguished from like the Ag Ombuds type role in the county, where it's more of a liaison, right? Like someone in CDFA's Farmer Equity Office who's the liaison with that program or other programs that answers questions from agencies, but they're not on the ground helping farmers like fill out paperwork, right? Like it's really important to separate CDFA's regulatory roles with other organizations' educational roles.
Thanks for that clarification. I know as Tessa said, we will get to both of those, both the Land Observatory and the Ag Ombuds in today's discussion, with the anticipation that it'll shape the discussion at the task force. But what I also heard you saying, James, and just wanted to flag, is that it's thinking about these things, but it's also thinking about prioritizing these things. So if you just lay them all out as all things that we should be supported, the true priority might be lost in that kind of, I don't know if I understood you correctly. That's what I heard. I just want to see if that was in fact part of, no, okay, that's not.
No, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
I agree with everything Ruth said.
Okay.
And I just think that like, I think there's something about like, the fact that there's I think if I'm not opposed to this idea, but I think it really needs to come from all of the task force and not, I want to have a larger discussion about it.
Okay.
In relationship to the Land Equity Observatory or the land monitoring program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, that's helpful. And maybe you could try to characterize this as well, James, if you would like, if you were on Goal Subcommittee 3, now I'm wondering. But essentially just what is being referenced right now was a conversation at the Goal 3 subcommittee that was noting there are many different proposals across the report to create either new programs or entities like the Land Observatory that James mentioned. And there was a request to staff to compile a list of all those things so that the task force could really think about it in a more holistic way and to make decisions like James was just saying about where different things are happening. And if there is a new entity that's being proposed or a new program, then what is it? So hopefully that captures
that
conversation.
I think that's right. Yeah, I mean, we there was a debate about, well, are we talking about these being programs? But it's like if we're talking about land monitoring and like, auditing all of the agricultural land in the state of California and who owns it, like, is that best centralized in one place, or is that best outsourced to a bunch of different organizations? And, we didn't have a consensus on there. And I think people were more along the lines of, let's look at everything in the report that would require a new entity and see what that entity would look like if we plucked all of those things out of the report and put them into one thing. And I think, just to say one more sentence on that, I think in certain parts of the state, it would make sense for orgs on the ground to do that. And in other parts of the state, I think there's nobody to do that. And so there would need to be some kind of thing. So I think the answer is going to be a little bit of both, but yeah. That's just me putting on a guessing cap.
Great. Thank you. Let's move on to the other in-line edits that we wanted to review and then come back to this conversation. Okay, so these are a couple more topics that we wanted to run by you all that we didn't actually have immediate edits in the initial revisions document quite yet. So the first one here is a piece of input that came from your guys' conversations that this might, this whole section 4.2 A through F, so unintentional policy consequences. Inequitable policy consequences. Yeah, so that one. There's a concern that these will increase bureaucratic complexity. So we just wanted to float this here and see if that concern stands. And if it does, then how you all want to maybe address that.
I feel like the problem right now is the bureaucratic complexity. So hopefully this is trying to lessen it. But right now we have one size fits all that is inequitable for small and diversified and priority producers. So, I mean, anytime you establish a new process, it does increase complexity, like interagency review or evaluating new regulations. But do we want to not evaluate new regulations? I mean, I don't know how to do that without those processes. Or maybe other task force members have ideas.
When I'm reading this list, there's somewhere I'm just like, there's no way this is going to happen, or like, who's going to do this, right? Like I'm like, mandate interagency review and evaluation prior to implementing new regulations to avoid conflicting guidance and requirements. Ensure policies don't. I mean, that happens already, and it's on a like there is who's doing that. What are the agencies, and how much is that process going to bog down people getting outcome-based results from whatever they're trying to do? As like the spirit of this, I'm like wholly aligned with. It's just like when I think about it in practice, I'm like, I don't know how that's going to work.
I think it would be coordinated by the person in the farmer equity office if that is a recommendation we promote, because that's already part of the farmer equity officer's stated job description.
Okay.
It's just, with only one person, like it's a bigger job, right? It's a much bigger job than like, let's tack that on to Thea's existing duties. So like, I feel like if there's one person focused on that in Thea's office, that could help. I would say it's not happening a whole lot right now in a meaningful way. So, I mean, we could even change it from mandate to like support, promote, encourage, like it's less strong, but I do think California has a lot of silos that aren't talking to each other and that are creating kind of cross purposes within like SWEEP, the climate smart ag programs at CDFA. The SWEEP program is encouraging people to go on drip, while irrigation districts and GSAs dealing with Sigma want people to maintain their surface water infrastructure.
Right.
Climate smart ag, you healthy soils, right? You get a healthy soils grant and you put in compost and cover crops. Now your irrigated lands regulatory program reporting got way more complex.
Right.
It's just like, it would be great. I mean, I know it's hard, right? I don't think it's gonna,
Well,
I'm not really optimistic about those agencies all really doing this, but I think we should at least have, we should encourage them to.
Is there anything that you guys would want to add or change to kind of respond to the challenge that you're pointing to and to this concern that's expressed?
I mean, the only thing that's coming up for me, I'm fine with everything kind of as it is. It's just some of this stuff won't have any teeth unless there's like a statutory regulatory feature to any of that, like there's just, and that's true for so many parts of right, we're creating policy recommendations, not laws. But like for some of these things, like, yeah, no, I think I'm just like, I'm getting a little stuck in the like what like, in order for A to happen, to me it would require a legislator passing a law that says, um in order to equitably support priority producers in the state of California, whenever there is new regulatory implementations, there needs to be interagency review to avoid conflicting guidance and requirements, to kind of like take two complicated regulatory processes and turn them into one unified, or three or four and turn them into one unified guidance for a farmer. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen. Like, I don't know if that law would ever be passed, but that's not our job, so I can leave that alone.
Well, this is feeling like maybe adding this to that list that you were just referencing related to new programs, new efforts that would need to be housed somewhere. So Ruth, you just mentioned maybe within CDFA, but perhaps we'll just note that we want to add this to that list as we're kind of compiling.
I mean, if we're making a wish list of things for a new institutional department to do, like taking the policy recommendations and turning them into laws would be great. Like that, I'm like 100% into that idea. Like,
Yeah,
that makes a ton of sense. Like, let's get some lawyers and legislatures together, legislative agents together, and be like, take these recommendations and turn them into a robust set of statutory regulations or amendments or whatever to like make these things have more teeth. That would be wonderful. Because then there'd be a tool for farmers to be like, you're not delivering, so we're suing you. like that's a good thing. Not suing us, but suing,
Are you guys ready to move on? I know you didn't land on anything concrete for this section, but are we feeling ready to go to the next one?
I'm fine to move on.
Okay.
I think one quick thing just from this is that although it didn't maybe change this language, I think the conversation you just had reiterated what this language is, what it should do, and then what is missing that's gonna be needed to take that next step. So I know it didn't necessarily change what you're looking at right now, but I do think, I'm taking notes, I think we have some, kind of other ideas that came out of that. So yeah, go ahead and move on, Tess. I just wanted to flag, I think that a lot actually was just said there. So thanks.
That's great. Okay, so C, the concern was that it's very broad. Folks need help getting into compliance, not just identifying non-compliance. And who administers TA is the question. So the possible solution here was a note to consider this recommendation in relation to the ag ombuds positions. And then we wanted you all to review this new language that Megan has highlighted here to make sure this sounds good.
I actually think this is not going to happen, but for the CI, I think that should be true for not just priority producers and land stewards, but maybe a broader group of farmers. But it kind of depends what the regulatory program is. Like there's a lot of programs where if you are showing a good faith effort that you won't be fined, for example, and it's not just for one demographic of priority producers and land stewards, which is the priority here, obviously, but I mean, I think that could apply more broadly. It's just it definitely will be challenging to get every regulatory program to adapt to that, but I think it's a good goal. Maybe something you could add when possible or something like that. That kind of gives it a loophole, but it's, sorry.
How's this language looking for you, James? We'll let.
I think, yeah.
Back in.
I think I would agree. I mean, like, again, this is a perfect example. This whole section is an example where unless there's some type of law to back it up, like, I don't really know how a lot of this stuff is going to like actually happen in the real world. There are parts of it that already are happening in the I'm not trying to like diminish the impact of this section. I think there will be, and so, well, sorry, let me get clarity. Tessa, part of the question around CI is like, do we need to define who the technical assistance providers are? Did I hear that right?
I think that was one of the questions that came up.
Yeah, I mean, that gets complicated too, because then, like, yeah, I feel like I don't actually know what the legal requirements are to call yourself a technical assistance provider. It's like an interesting question. Um, you know, SPDCs, NGOs that explicitly do technical assistance as their work is relatively self-evident. Same for like, UC cooperative extension agents, RCDs, people working at various CDFIs, like all of that is very clear, but I don't know if by defining that more deeply, we would end up excluding alternative types of technical assistance that feel particularly culturally relevant to certain communities. But I do think it's going to be complicated to define what these things mean around good faith and things like that. I mean, to me, it's like people are doing the best they can. They're working with somebody, they're working to achieve something, and they're not compliant, but like it's like impossible given the like what's happening on the ground. And that's a good thing. Like we don't want to but it's also only one time, right? So it's a little bit of like you get one time to pass, and then after that you do have to pay the fees. um I'm happy with the language. It's fine. Sorry, I'm like thinking openly uh as I work through it.
Okay, I think this is your first time seeing, or this is new language, so that's okay. Ruth, did you want to finish your thought there?
I got a
And then
frog in my throat.
we're gonna move on because we actually have a lot more even substantive things to get to.
I think I'm fine with this, and we'll obviously discuss it more at the next meeting with the full task force.
Okay. All right. The final one on this slide was about, Megan's on it, 4.2 G of 4. The question was about if there's going to be impacts on OSHA compliance related to worker protection. So the question is if making these changes is going to have an unintended consequence of reducing existing protections. And that's a question for you guys. Again, noting that this is quite a niche subject and we don't want to spend that much time on it right now just because there's other things on the agenda.
I think 1 and 3 under that section do not undermine worker protections in any way. Those are just helping people comply with existing requirements. Number 2, with a revised fee structure, I don't think that would have an effect, but compliance procedures, if those were altered, I could see that might have those that would need to be evaluated. I mean, could you put a tiered approach, comma, without reducing worker protections or something?
That seems, yeah.
Without reducing fundamental worker protections or something like that.
Yeah, I like that.
And removing compliance procedures.
I mean, fundamentally too, it seems like it's saying, can we waive OSHA fee structures or like, revise to make them more equitable for priority producers, to me means making them lower or non-existent. Um, but the compliance piece is still really important.
What if we change compliance to enforcement?
Okay.
Because what's in my mind when I look at this is the fee structures are things like OSHA starts out with a $25,000 fee because they assume that the farmer's lawyers are going to bargain them down.
Mm,
If you don't have a lawyer and you don't understand that that's how it works, you pay $25,000 where larger farmers than you are paying 5,000 because they bargained OSHA down. And I did not understand that that was how it worked until this happened to somebody. So, so to me, the fee structure is just start with 5,000 and have the person pay. I mean, like, I don't know why it has to be that complicated, but also it's the back and forth, right? It's this negotiation where maybe there could be a more straightforward process.
It's a helpful detail, Ruth. That's good to know. So revise OSHA fee structures and processes to be more equitable. Does that seem like a good edit?
I heard it as revise OSHA fee structures and enforcement procedures to be more equitable for priority producers and land stewards, such as a tiered approach without reducing fundamental worker protections.
Great.
Is
I
that
like
correct? Okay,
Yeah, I think that's great.
okay.
Perfect. Let's go on to the next slide. We have a few more of these. Okay, 4.3F. So I think the question here is, let's see. Concern that streamlining farm worker housing without adding accountability measures will allow inhumane living conditions. So the suggestion is just to ensure that we're pairing accountability measures with this recommendation. Does that seem right? Do you all think that this balance has been sufficiently accomplished? Those are kind of the questions for this one. So that's F. Yeah.
And it looks like that while ensuring humane living conditions is there, actually, F2. That might
Thank you.
be,
Perfect.
yeah, so not sure if that is adequate to you all at this point.
I feel like it's not about changing the requirements, it's about making the permit easier to get. But I don't actually know that much about that particular process. So maybe others know more about that.
this, what was the change?
The concern was that some of these streamlined processes or changes to housing are going to lead to less humane living conditions for farm workers. And so wondering if this, while ensuring humane living conditions, is sufficient as far as the protection goes.
I think it does. I mean, what I have seen is actually the opposite, right? So I think, I mean, I definitely work a lot in farm worker housing on the coast side, and like my experience has been there's two type of operators. There are good faith operators and bad faith operators, and the bad faith operators basically use extortive practices to force their farm workers to live in terrible living conditions as part of their employment, and they do not meet basic living conditions. And then there are good faith actors who do not have the money to buy and permit a new house, or maybe they live inside a coastal conservancy zone, so it's actually impossible, basically, like functionally impossible to build farm worker housing. And even at the best possible wage that they can pay, their staff can't afford to live in Half Moon Bay or Santa Cruz because it's too expensive. And so the absolute best they can do is like pour a concrete slab, buy an Airstream or an RV with a pop out, run water and electricity to it and have people live like that. That's like, and so when I see this streamlined process and decreased costs related to permitting housing for agricultural workers, I don't see any part of that would like, I mean, streamlining process and decreasing costs is just going to make it easier for people to build what they need to for for people working on their farms or business owners themselves. Like many farmers themselves would like to live where they work and are unable to. So I think this is adequate. I don't look, I mean, there are going to be bad faith actors who take all of these policy recommendations and try to find loopholes and ways to use it to, carry out bad practices. I'm kind of Irene, I don't know. I'm kind of curious what you think about this. Just, given the experience that you have working with communities that are living on farms and navigating this kind of tenuous relationship between, I mean, like, look, it's weird to like live where you work and have your rent be tied to your wages to one person. Like all of that's problematic in its own way. But yeah, some thoughts there. I think the language is adequate.
Yeah, thank you, James. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I disconnected here. Ironically, I came to Ventura for a grand opening of farm worker housing out here in Oxnard. So I'm here in the parking lot right now of the Dolores Huerta Gardens. So yeah, I think I didn't catch all of it. So I'm just kind of trying to catch up since my internet disconnected. But I know that we have talked a lot about this, especially with like the farm workers transitioning to become small farmers and housing being a huge issue. And I don't know if it would be related to this point, but also the amount of funding in various counties, especially like affluent counties, like say San Benito County, where there's not a lot of funding directed to like affordable housing, especially I think predominantly being a predominantly farm worker community, many of them, like for instance, are not counted in the census or whatnot. And so I don't know if that would relate to this too, like in terms of like funding for this housing for, or if there's anything included here. And sorry again, I'm trying to catch
That's
up
okay.
here with this language, but
Irene, can I ask you a question?
mm-hmm.
Do you see any like just kind of big red flags around the language of like streamlining processes, decreasing costs for permitting related to ag worker housing, as long as it's conditioned upon ensuring humane living conditions?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that sounds great and it's concise, to the point.
Okay, thanks for entertaining that question all. I think that's clear and we can leave the language as is. So let's move on to the next one here, which is 4.4a. So this is about the Agricultural Tenants Bill of Rights. There was some suggestion to develop clear guidelines on how this would be implemented and utilized effectively. I think, so the question here for you is how you want to make sure that implementation happens and perhaps, including that in the recommendation rather than actually describing the implementation in the recommendation. So curious how you all are feeling about this one.
I think it's the same issue that James has brought up previously. Is there, without these being turned into a law, are we, able to enforce anything here? There is a residential tenants bill of rights. I'd be curious to know how that's implemented and enforced.
Thanks for that, Leah.
I think kind of to follow up on that, it's also important to make sure that it doesn't create a disincentive for landowners to lease land. I don't know how to do that, but I think it's something to think about. Like the more complicated it is to lease land because there's more and more requirements, nobody's obligated to lease the land that they have. So it needs to somehow be something that is still attractive to the landowner.
Hopefully the combination of some additional Bill of Rights with the landowner tax incentives to lease land will make it worth it.
I was just gonna
Yeah,
say,
that's
in
right.
a perfect world, there's like the carrot or the stick of like unused agriculturally viable land that is not being actively transitioned to somebody who can use it well is going to cost you more and more money every year. Like your tax base will go up for
Right.
that unused land. And the alternative is like lease it to a farmer. You have to use the agricultural tenants bill of rights, but then you get like a huge tax incentive for leasing that land to them. So it's kind of like when the two are operating together, I think this
Mhm.
makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But again, like, I mean, it's feeling more and more like we need a high level recommendation, like a superseding recommendation that is like, turn this shit into law. Sorry, apologies for my language, but like, figure out how to make this legally enforceable.
Yeah, I agree. And the tax incentives is that that's in a different goal, right?
Yes.
Oh, question, yes.
Implementing this specifically, but there are other tax incentives. Is that
Is
that
it
right?
okay to reference that somehow?
Yes.
I'm not sure what the best way to do that would be, but in conjunction with or in combination with tax incentives for leasing land or something like that.
Mhm.
I'm curious, Ruth, if there was any particular part of the Bill of Rights that stood out to you as providing too high of a burden.
Could we look at it real quick? Or I can pull it up here.
Megan, it would be, I don't know if it would be in the, August draft, it wouldn't be here in this, in this document.
In Appendix B.
Yes,
Here we
you
go.
got it.
This guy.
Well done, that was fast.
AML. All right, tell me when to scroll down.
Scroll down a little bit. I think survivability of tenure upon sale of property might be difficult. Let's see. Some of those I think are not major barriers for landowners. And some of them are really, it should be part of the lease anyway. Or maybe Leah has additional thoughts about that.
Oh, they should, but they often aren't.
Um, in the part about landowners may not sell or otherwise remove water rights, the key thing for groundwater markets is groundwater allocations. Could we add that term to that list?
Well, you say it again, Ruth, sorry, I'm taking notes, but I did not catch what you're talking about.
So landowners may not sell or otherwise remove water rights. Can we just add to that list groundwater allocations?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, actually, these look very reasonable. I would say there's a few things like the tenure, survivability of tenure without defining for how long that might be.
It would be the term of the
the
lease.
term of the lease. Yeah.
So if you know you're planning on selling, then you just make a shorter term lease. You can't promise someone 15-year lease and then decide to sell 2 years in, and then they've invested in this. So I know that's the stretch one in my opinion here, but our base leases all have survivability of tenure, unless otherwise negotiated. So there's a couple of clarifications I plan on adding to this list. Things like dual indemnification, I think I need to define that.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Usually there's just indemnification for the landlord within a lease agreement, and landlords can also do bad things. So
right.
and they may also be operating on the property. I mean, any number of things could be happening there.
Right.
So, we have dual indemnification as standard language also in our base leases, and I have always appreciated that.
Yeah. I think the usable value of permanent improvements, remaining usable value is good. Including permanent crops invested on leased land. I think potentially that could be a lot of money, buying back the usable value of the improvements. So if somebody drills a well and they spend $50,000 and then they planted almonds, that's a good chunk of change. I agree that it's correct that whoever invested that should get the remaining value back. I wonder if that, because I know some tenants use those things as bargaining tools to get a longer lease, for example. I wonder how that would affect those things. For example, if a farmer pays for a new well to be, or a replacement well to be drilled, and then the landowner says, okay, I'll give you a 20-year lease if you make that improvement to my land. But they kind of work that out. And then I guess after 20 years it just becomes less of a bargaining tool. I don't know. I think I need to think about that one more.
Yeah, and I'm happy to chat about it too. Typically, the ground rule is you want the lease to be at least the length of the usable life of the improvement.
Right.
So the idea being that if you've got an appropriately termed lease, you don't owe anything at the end. But if the lease is terminated early, you can't then just kind of have the farmer be out their investment that they have not been able to reap. So so that's the strategy. So it does not stop you from still having the appropriate term of the lease. In fact, it encourages it because they don't have to pay them for their improvement.
I wonder if there could be language that kind of even emphasizes that, like that the lease
I can work on it.
The lease should match the investment that the tenant is making.
Yeah, I mean, this is usually the language that I use in describing why we're doing things and why we're recommending to do things a certain way. But I can try to include a bit of an explanation within the suggestion.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Sure. Happy.
One wrinkle that is coming, this all makes sense for me if it's something that the farmer is paying for. What happens if it's like through a program and then like where like it's kind of subsidized? Would it still track, or would it be like minus, you know what I mean? Like what if somebody gets a grant to put in a new well?
Mm-hmm.
Would the value of that well, like would the farmer be able to leverage? I guess they would, right? Like that would just be because of their effort that they got the grant. It's the same thing as them paying for it.
They earned it.
Right.
But again, the ideal situation is that they're able to remain on the property for the usable life of the improvement. And so they wouldn't be owed any money, but it's if it gets terminated early. And I got to tell you, I have actually seen a landlord exploit a farmer into building a bunch of infrastructure and then kicking
Yeah.
them off.
Right.
So
Oh, I believe it.
and then they started a farm. They were like, thanks, bye, and started their own farm. So I'm not saying that most landlords are bad actors, but there are.
Would it make sense for that point to exclude publicly funded improvements?
We could add that caveat if we felt strongly about it.
Or something like, because it is weird, like if CDFA pays for a drip irrigation system to be put in through sweep, and then the tenant farmer leaves before the lease is up and is it doesn't make sense for the landowner to have to pay them for what CDFA already paid for.
Yeah, I mean, I've included language in agreements before that specifically talked about the farmer's investment.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So if they had to do a cost share,
Right.
yeah.
Or
If
they
they-
contributed
if they-
labor.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I do make sure that when farmers are including their estimated costs, that they're including their own labor. Very important.
So does that mean here, just to confirm, next steps, Leah, you would be kind of building on this language a bit based on the conversation right now and then bringing forward an updated, is that correct?
Yeah, me and my team wanted to take another pass at this anyway.
Okay.
So we're going to take another pass at it. I feel like there's a couple of things we could probably add too. It's okay for me to add new things, maybe? Yes, not too late. One or two?
What does this subcommittee think about that? Does that go directly into the October draft if that is, if Leah's team gets us that in time, or is it better to propose that and sort of a new ideas for consideration document? What are you all feeling? I think we need your guidance there.
I think given our timeline, I have full confidence in Leah's ability to suggest great language that we could still, look at in the draft. I don't think it has to be a separate item.
Irene, do you want to state your question before we move on?
I was just curious if anyone, maybe Leah or anyone, I don't know too much about like how housing, affordable housing goes, but the possibility of like shared equity, especially for like long-term farm worker housing. Like if residents could actually build some equity and
Is that a question about the tenant bill of rights?
no, sorry, it's just in regards to.
You want to clarify then? Or if a task force member has a direct response, go ahead. Just trying to clarify where that was in reference to.
Irene, I'm interpreting your question is there a way, or like, do we have in the recommendations, and if not, is there a way that we can add a recommendation around supporting shared ownership, I think part of this is going to be tied to like the entity structure of whatever farm business is running. Like, I think it's a lot easier to have shared equity in something with like cooperative structures or clear entity structures that allow for that, but that there should be something around being able to empower and encourage like farmers or farm workers at farms to have some kind of equity in the business or in built structures, I guess.
Yeah. I
Kind of?
think that's sort of what I'm thinking, or just, I mean, if a farmer is providing the housing and we're talking about sorry, I'm trying to go back to the not the Bill of Rights, but the actual and the point in the draft document.
Are you assuming that the farmer providing the farm worker housing with reduced permitting burden is a tenant farmer and not an owner of the land? Is that the question with shared equity?
Yeah, isn't that what we're talking about? Where they're tenant. But we can move it. We can move forward. Sorry. I think
Well, I think if, yeah, so Irene, if you
I'm kind of cutting out quite a bit.
okay.
Yeah, we could move forward.
Feel free to follow up with more on that topic, Irene, if you have something you'd want to add to the housing section, and then we can see how to where best to have that conversation. Okay. Let's move on to the last one on this slide. So another question here that was floated was whether the 100-year lease could entrench inequitable quasi-hereditary land control. This was the recommendation was to increase the minimum or the maximum lease from 50 to 100 years. So the question is, do you want to go back on this or remove it, or do the benefits outweigh any negative concerns, any concerns there? Leah, I know that you had, I thought this was tied to some of your work, so feel free to jump in.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting point to bring up. And I don't know that I have an answer on which we should weigh more heavily. California is one of the handful of states that has a lease maximum around 50 years. There are other states that have a lease maximum of 100 years. To be honest, tax reassessment is the thing that I see most limit people's lease term. I see farmers opting to be 34 years because if it's 35 years, the property taxes are reassessed. So I can see the argument that really long leases will have a potential to entrench the land. But if it's in, if the land lease term is in a priority farm family, like there's benefits there as well to having leases be able to stay within a family for generations, given the price of land in California, and that leasing can often be a better option for agricultural land stewardship. So I don't know. Thinking out loud here.
Yeah. What do other folks think about what to do with this recommendation?
I feel like it's kind of outside of my expertise.
I don't know enough to weigh in on this, and I defer to Leah.
Well, perhaps we can get to the bottom of where that concern came from, and if there's a need to follow up, perhaps we'll follow up with you, Leah.
Yeah, if there's any like deeper thoughts about that and the argument for that, I'm definitely interested. I think it's a really good, I'm glad to hear it because it's a really interesting perspective that is completely valid. So I can also then, if you have a little more info, I can also then bring it back to my team and we can mull it over too. Yeah, it feels like a good brain buster, that one.
Okay, great. We will follow up. So let's go back to the slides. Next slide. This is the last one of these specific slides. So one of the pieces of input was avoiding creating silos across state agencies. This was sort of a general comment about goal 4. And the direction that I think the conversation in August pointed to was consolidating state programs / entities into a single one. So I think, like we mentioned earlier, goal 3 subcommittee was also talking about that. And I think we wanted to just kind of have you hold this question in your brains as we talk about the next few slides, because the next few slides are all about the Ag Ombuds position and program, and then the Department of Ag Equity. So as we talk through those slides, just kind of think through silos, where things go together, where they should be operating in a separate capacity. So, and then the final topic that we have is CEQA, just to give you all a little heads up before the end of the day. So we're going to try to spend about, I don't know, 10 max, 10 minutes on each one of these topics. So let's move to the next slide. And I'm just going to give a couple, I think I'll just give you each like a minute or so to read through this slide to jog your memory about what we talked about in August.
And just to be clear, as you're reading through this was kind of a series of back and forth discussions, and then what staff did was look through that conversation and try to distill it into like what language could possibly then move into the report as a recommendation. So that's what you're looking at here, as a distilled version of that conversation for your discussion, of course.
Thanks, Camille. And Irene, can you read this right now, or are you driving? Maybe we can read it out loud if that would be helpful.
I can read it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not driving. I ended up getting the internet code here. So
Okay. Yay.
Thank you.
Can I throw in some thoughts?
Yeah, please kick us off.
I like the first bullet point. I'm not aware of any, well, no, maybe I am aware of an ag ombudsman who's under UCCE. Is that a thing? That's a thing, right? That currently happens? I think the only ones I know about are RCD, but I could be wrong.
So James, there are 4 ag ombuds currently. 3 are at UCCE and 1 is at an RCD.
Oh, okay. So Vince is UCCE.
That's right.
Okay, cool. Yeah. That makes sense. Totally on board with bullet point 1. Bullet point 2, actually, the sub bullet is confusing to me. I think it should actually be like, ensure they receive culturally competent training to ensure effectiveness in the regions that they're working. I don't think all of the statewide ag ombuds people need to have the exact same training to do specific ombudsman work in different regions with different communities. Just to tweak there potentially. And then I'm okay with the option of the grant program, but that also kind of feeds back into the ensuring longevity. I think we need to pick one as a recommendation and say we want this to be long-term positions that exist in perpetuity, and just say that. So ensuring whatever financial mechanism allows for county ombuds people to exist in perpetuity. Complaint streamlining, I want to pull out and put in the statewide land monitoring, land equity office, what have you, catch all institutional space. But if not, I do think that makes sense here. And then I don't know what the creative feedback loop, I mean, that's their job. So to me, that other bullet would be strengthened if it was like, allow enforcement of concerns and feedback to regulatory agents or something like that. Not enforcement, but like some way to get those things brought to the people who can actually impact those agencies. Annual report, I'm totally agnostic on. Annual reports take a lot of time, and I would hate for there to be a situation in which an ombuds person was spending so much time working on an annual report than actually servicing the community that they're working with. And an annual report, again, is something that would make sense for like the observatory, right? Like go out, collect the data, run a report on all these things. And I don't, this last one around time revision is confusing to me a little. This is separate from the like shot clock, right? Because those feel like very distinct things. Like I think farmers should get a shot clock on permitting where they have to approve or deny their project within a short period of time. And otherwise, as long as those farmers are operating in good faith and building things according to code, that the project can be basically like greenlit. If they don't, it's like you have 90 days to say no, and if you don't, then the answer is yes. Those are my thoughts.
Great,
So-
very helpful. Yeah, go for it, Ruth.
I think on the feedback loop, the motivation behind that is if the ag ombuds, especially in multiple counties, are interacting with farmers who are experiencing regulatory difficulties, that part of the benefit of that technical assistance is going back to the agencies, whether local, state, regional, and letting them know what the pain points are and what could be improved. So I don't think an annual report is probably the best way to do that. But I think that's a strength of that this program could have is, I think one of the things that sometimes gets critiqued about all the technical assistance funding is that why aren't we making our programs easier to navigate, right? And we just have to keep funding technical assistance. So the technical assistance should be feeding back into the program to make it better from the technical assistance providers who see what's working and what's not working on the ground. So something like that, whatever that is. I don't think that this program will have the ability to make a timeline for, especially for state agencies, to improve their processes. That's going to be out of their control. But I think some regular process for forwarding and consolidating and summarizing recommendations, especially if it comes from the whole program. Like if let's say like dream scenario, we get an ag ombuds in like 50 counties. I don't think that's going to happen, but let's say they're all over California, either at an RCD or UCCE or something like that. And many of them are experiencing the same thing. That's very powerful feedback from across the state that says, this is not working, or this is a suggestion for improvement. And that can be formalized somehow. That could be very powerful. But I don't think an annual report, I agree with James. I don't think an annual report is the right way to do it. And then I agree about taking complaints streamlining. It doesn't have to be there. It could be in another section. One of my big concerns was about the grant program. I think, is that in there because of the comments from the task force when they first looked at this section? And so my understanding was that instead of housing it in UCCE, that there was a suggestion of making it a grant program where like any organization could apply.
Yes, that's correct. That was the context.
That I think that would make it less effective. I appreciate James's point of like, if we name certain organizations like the Farmer Equity Office or UCANR or RCDs or nonprofits, just to be sensitive to like, are we recommending things for our own programs? And so I'm not going to recommend something for ANR, like because I'm from ANR, but I think farming it out to a bunch of different organizations is going to make it a lot more complicated. And I also think we have to consider what the mandates of those organizations are. So, I think it makes more sense for it to be more public organizations that have more of a neutral mission. So that you don't get an organization that's very mission driven, that maybe not all regulatory structures or programs kind of fit within that. Like it really has to be kind of broad across multiple regulatory programs, zoning, water, fertilizer, housing. And so it's got to be broad, and it's got to be sort of more politically neutral. I think, and that's why I think A&R makes sense as kind of an institution that would encompass all that. I think obviously it can be successful at RCDs as well. And just keeping in mind, RCDs have a conservation mandate rather than a broad, production mandate. So, and I think it could be successful in RCDs, but I think it's case by case basis. And also thinking about the boards of the RCDs, you have to be a landowner to be on the board, and that sometimes may affect how policies or programs get rolled out. So, obviously the RCD in Tulare County is not the same as the RCD in Santa Cruz County, right? So and maybe it's kind of region specific, but I think there could be criteria, like if you set it up where it could be either RCDs or CE offices, and that you'd have to apply or something and say, like, here's my justification for why it should be in this county, why it should be housed in one organization or another. Maybe there could be a process for that to really determine, like, where's the best place to house it. But I was concerned about the grant program. I definitely understand wanting to make things more accessible to more organizations, but I think in this case, having it more centralized and stabilized. So if it's a grant program where you have to reapply all the time, then it's just going to be unstable. So whatever it is, I hope it can be more, funded in a more stable way where those positions have more longevity, versus like a constant competitive grant cycle. I guess that's the third bullet point under that, right? Is ensure longevity. So.
I agree with that, seeing what the RCDs have to go through. I agree with most of what my colleagues have said here. I think I love the idea of there being an ombudsperson in every county, or maybe a couple counties share, but for the most part, that is the dream. I think for me, as someone who's referring folks and has a team referring folks to the ecosystem of service providers throughout the state, I'd like to see that the definition of an ombudsperson must include like X, Y, and Z services as a baseline. And then if that particular ombudsperson is funded for additional projects, great. But I think that I've noticed that a lot of folks just kind of don't know what an ombudsperson is. And so it'd be great to have consistency, at least in some base service areas, around, assisting with regulatory information and compliance and a few other things. But I'm not sure if this is proposing that ombuds people also work on land access or just on land-based regulations and compliance. So I'm curious if that suggestion is here.
I think that base services description is a really great idea. And I think the idea of the ag ombuds position is that it both works on land access and all the other stuff to ensure the secure land tenure, right? To make sure you're successful in staying on the land. I think it's all needed.
I think I'd want to dive a little bit more into what that proposal is, around actually assisting with land access, beyond with tenure, I think, and some of the non-contractual based tenure situations that we've been talking about around permitting and access to funds and information related to stewardship on the land.
Would it make sense to specifically call out those things in the description of the base services?
I feel like I'd want to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
That's good.
I think one of the reasons that I that kind of raises some flags for me is that I would prefer to avoid I want to ensure that we're setting ombuds people up for success, and the job is very large, and I don't want to make a suggestion that we have this ombuds person and they are going to solve all of our problems in one position. So, providing some parameters around at least the base of what they do, and if they have additional capacity, they can work on other things. But I've really wanted more ombuds people for a long time. I just don't want them to be completely overburdened and then not being able to actually provide the base level of service that we would expect from an ombuds person.
We're going to go a couple more minutes on this topic and then move on. James, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll be super quick. Two thoughts. One, between what Ruth shared earlier about like kind of you can be an ag ombudsman if your organization is mandated for X, Y, and Z feels like something to come back to. I like that. And coupled with what Leah said, like around framing who can be an ombudsman, and maybe that does expand it, but beyond UCC and RCD, which could be a good thing. Maybe, although I'm happy leaving it with UCC and RCD. The on the discussion that was just being had, I think we need more ag ombuds people everywhere, and I don't think like land access is such a bear, whereas like the day-to-day like role that I see ag ombuds people doing in San Mateo County and up in the North Bay and Santa Clara is like helping farmers troubleshoot a whole host of things, kind of like a general practitioner, plugging them into resources and other organizations that are the specialists. I think of ag ombuds people as like your general practitioner who is like, tell me what's going on, and sometimes I can help you, and sometimes you need an ENT, and that's a land access specialist.
Mhm.
So I'm sending you to this organization, or sometimes you need a conservation specialist. So I'm going to plug you in with NRCS or somebody on our conservation team or somebody in an NGO that's working on conservation because of the resource base in a given county. And so I think that makes more sense to me, and that is more tenure-y folk. That to me speaks more to like day-to-day farming operations, navigating day-to-day challenges. I think there are other entities, not exclusively, but likely, that will hold the weight of those land access challenges and transitions.
Okay, so I think the next question for all of you is how you want to move forward with these ideas. If you want to see them reflected in the October report, if you are, wanting to review draft language, how are you feeling about that?
I think we should put something in that's explicit about adding ombuds people 100%. Like,
I
I
agree.
just think the vagueness is around like, if we were to run down this quickly, I'm like, yes to first bullet, tweak second bullet to ensure cultural competency.
Yeah, not with this exact language, sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I meant based on everything that you all have just shared, updating the language, and then should we be
Right.
reflecting this in the October?
That sounds great to me.
Okay. Irene, do you want to? Oh, sorry, Ruth, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, and also we've had the webinar and people have been sent the recording, and if they want to, know more about that, then they certainly can before the meeting.
I love that this is coming up. I feel like it may have gotten lost in the shuffle, but we had brought it up in one conversation, however long ago, the promotion of additional ombuds people. So I'm glad to see it making its way in here. It does remind me of something else that I do not recall if it has made it in anywhere, and that is ensuring that there are public lands liaisons. And I'm just putting a pin in that. I think I had elevated that at some point. I don't remember if it made its way in anywhere, but we were getting into the public lands working group, and I think I don't know, it might have gotten lost in the shuffle, but in doing work to increase access to publicly owned lands, it is very challenging when there is not kind of a consistent type similar to an ombuds type of person, but a similar type of public lands liaison within each city and county that you can actually communicate with around lands that are available. There are typically, like, there might be some real estate department. There might be attorneys, but there typically isn't someone that an organization or a farmer can actually communicate with as a liaison in order to understand lands that are available, or to to be a liaison with the real estate department or with the attorneys who is in support of land access for farmers. It's really only if you get someone who's jazzed about it that you really can start to make headway. And those are few and far between. There are a few counties across the state who are doing this, but not consistent. So support for, funding for, whatever language we wanted to use there. I just wanted to elevate that again. This sparked that for me.
Really quickly, Leah, just to make sure I understand, and that addition would be, is this talking about county? This would be a position with a county similar to an ag ombuds. It's a county level position as a liaison. Is that correct?
County level agricultural lands liaison for publicly owned lands.
Okay. That is not there, so I'm glad you brought it up again and we can keep workshopping that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So I think staff will do quite a few edits based on what you all just shared, and then we can reflect that in October draft. I think, Camille, did you want to say something?
No, sorry. I was saying,
I think Irene might though. You just came off mute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, James.
Sorry, Irene.
No, it's okay. Thank you. Yeah, I was just, I think where my mind is going is maybe to the next topic as well. But what I feel with the ag ombuds, I really love the whole concept, and I'm really in favor of the ombuds. I think I may have met one or two when we were in Washington, D.C., like at USDA. I had a big kind of, conference we had there. I just feel, for me, in the ideal world, aside from the 50 ombuds, 50 counties, would be like where, sorry, is my voice really loud or no?
You're good. We can hear you
Okay.
well.
Okay, because I'm wearing these headphones and I'm like hearing myself. Okay, it's just like who are they all? Like, how is this all coming together? Like I feel it's maybe can sometimes be sort of fragmented, and in the end, there's no exact agency or department that sort of is getting all of this reporting, and so that's where I kind of see like something like that department that we've been discussing of a Department of Agricultural Equity or wherever it may be, housed to sort of be the ones that maybe actually do this annual report or are tracking all of this, because if not, we're not really seeing the longstanding issues at hand, or maybe everything is just independently tracked. I'm not sure, because I didn't actually. I need to do my homework and watch the listening session or the engagement with the ombuds person. But I'm not sure how that works. I just feel that part is really missing, because we see that happening a lot, where even just nonprofit organizations like ours and various others that will maybe at the same time be helping the same farmers or the same families, and then nobody really knows what's being done, right? There's just a lot of puzzle pieces that are just working parts that are working independently. And so I think the beautiful thing of this would be like, what department or agency is actually overseeing or getting, or it's like the main hub of some sort. Anyways, but yeah, I definitely like the whole idea of the ombuds.
I think that's a really great point, Irene. I think, you know, if UCCE, ANR, and the RCDs are the entities hosting those positions in their counties, then it would make sense for that group to have a coordinator, I think, like a statewide coordinator that would work with all the people in the counties to unify the program and provide the feedback to state agencies. What I wouldn't want to have is have it housed in an agency that has regulatory power, because then it becomes really blurry. You want to make sure that the confidentiality of the farmers is kept, you know, really private and secure, and that they feel comfortable going to the ombuds person and knowing that that's not ever going to be reported, like whatever their specific issue is or that they're having difficulty with, and you know what actions they're taking, that that's kept within the RCD or UCANR office, and that's not going up to CDFA or DWR or DPR or OSHA or any other state agency that has regulatory power. So as long as it's coordinated outside of a regulatory agency, and then there's a feedback mechanism that can, you know, summarize feedback from the whole state. But I think it could be really powerful if it had some kind of statewide coordinator that was housed in one of those entities. And again, you know, the big caveat, I don't want to be just like pushing for my own organization, but I'm just going to sort of put it forward that there's a resource there that you could consider if you are interested.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. And actually, the ones that I met are from UCANR, so that was really great. And yeah, I don't know if it would have to be like housed in a regulatory agency, or like say is the California Natural Resource Agency. I mean, that's not considered regulatory, is it? As an example, right?
Well, DWR is within that, and they regulate Sigma.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I mean, I really feel it needs to be in like an educational or technical assistance kind of institution rather than like an actual government agency, because it's supposed to be the liaison between the government and the farmers.
Yeah. No, I know I see what you mean, but I mean that was just a side question. But
Sure.
I definitely agree with like say when I worked for a nonprofit, but we did surveys of farm workers all across the country for the National Agriculture Worker Survey. We kept all the identifying information like confidential, right, in our offices. So that's sort of like I see like UCANR like or the RCDs being like satellite offices, but reporting back as to what are these issues, and
exactly,
the agency would do most of the work, hopefully, when it comes to keeping, you know, reporting, but without identifiable information, something like that. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. That was a side question, like would that be considered a regulatory agency? But thank you.
Well, I guess part of it is.
Yeah, I guess they all kind of partly are.
Well, DWR was before Sigma. DWR was not regulatory, so it's. I guess it depends. But I think it's more like this program is trying to tell the regulatory agencies what's not working. So it's helpful to have that objectivity of being a different entity.
Let's move on to the next slide because we're running out of time here. Which is the Department of Ag Equity. So bringing this topic back into the mix, there's a kind of summary from your guys' conversation. So the proposal that went in August, excuse me. So the proposal that went into the August meeting was to create this state department focused on advancing equity in agriculture through a bunch of different activities. So administering financial resources and technical assistance, advancing interagency collaboration, addressing complaints, providing permitting, and much more, language access, and generally serving as a resource. The discussion in August kind of tracked the 4 different government entity ideas that were being put forth by, I think it was a working group. And you all noted that they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. The task force should consider the best type of programs and where they should be housed. And so maybe that's in the same entity or not. And then you all expressed priority to improve and resource what already exists. So for this subcommittee, we're wondering what you want to do with this idea, but I think maybe if we think more about this week, this conversation has been updated. And so for all of you who have been in those other conversations, feel free to bring sort of the additional context in to this conversation. And yeah, we just want to open it up to see where this department goes, if it's even a department, how you all want to really reach the goals that are kind of outlined on this slide. And then, of course, related to the Ag Ombuds conversation that you all just had.
Just for clarification, the proposal is that all the different kind of departments that we had suggested become one department, and that it's this subcommittee that's going to weigh this proposal? What'd I miss?
Yeah, I think that's essentially the direction of this conversation. It's wondering how you all want to fit these pieces together. And so is it a Department of Ag Equity? Is it a new program? Where is it going to be housed?
So a quick caveat to that though, is that there was a list of proposals, Leah, in August. The Ag Ombuds was one of them. Increased capacity of the CDFA Farm Equity Office was another one. And then a new Department of Ag Equity was another one. There was a list of ideas there. So I just want to clarify that the reason why we're talking about this in this subcommittee is not because this is only the responsibility of the subcommittee, is that those other ideas, the Ag Ombuds, got moved to goal 4 as something to continue moving forward. So staff thought that this was the most appropriate place to kind of ask you all, you're working on this piece of the puzzle, is there a more expansive vision that you don't want to let go of? So I just wanted to kind of clarify a little bit there, Leah. You are not fully responsible in this subcommittee with solving for the question that was posed.
And how does the observatory thing fit in here? Is that part of this, or is that still a separate thing?
That's the question.
Yeah, that's an open question for all of you.
I have thoughts. Oh, go ahead, Irene.
No, go ahead, James. I'll follow.
Okay. I mean, I don't like the proposal from August. I don't like it all. I'm like, that is completely reinventing the wheel, and it's going to have a ton of corners to smooth out. And there are already tons of both governmental and non-governmental organizations and institutions and community projects addressing a lot of these things. So I'm not into like a State Department that is focused on that. At the same time, I do think that there are a lot of features that we want. There are like some of the recommendations call for very specific functionality to exist that doesn't exist right now. And I think we should bundle all of those and see what that would look like as some type of department or institution or organization. And in some cases, maybe some of those things are best kind of distilled into various existing things. But I think like fundamentally, when we're talking about land, I'm referencing the conversation on Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever that was, but like having, or maybe it was I think it was yesterday, my God. There are other things that I just don't think we should like put in. What am I trying to say? I think for all the things around the land market, the land mat, whatever that land kind of institution was that we talked about, and then the observatory, like I think all of those functions would make sense being bundled together. And that's something that we should talk about at the next meeting, is being like a new created entity that would have X, Y, and Z structure. But I definitely don't like the language from the proposal from the August meeting.
James, what land thing that isn't the land observatory? What else did I miss?
It's
Are you talking about the land market monitoring?
yes, the land
Okay.
market monitoring.
So that's the new proposed name for the land observatory, just to be clear.
Yeah, it's the same thing. But it would be doing things like, and I'm not going to get all these right, but like we had talked and not agreed about like assessing either pre-sale or, in my opinion, we need to audit it because there are things that happen pre-sale that we would want to capture. But that would like kind of assess both what's out there and then assess impact of various programs that are happening based on policy recommendations. Like work that is tethered to the recommendations would kind of be overseen, researched, collected. The reports would come from that thing. Is kind of how I'm thinking about it and understand it, but that's just me. Like everyone's got a slightly different version of that, I think.
Thanks. I think I follow.
I'm thinking what could be, because I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking that there have been a lot of really fantastic ideas and like nuances added to ideas from today's conversation. And that has been true in the subcommittee meetings this week. So I think the task that staff have on our plates right now is to do that bundling work that James just described. Or it's not necessarily to effectively bundle, but it's to gather and then to bring to the task force a list of those new entities. James, you said it well. You said functionalities that don't exist right now. Thought that actually was a pretty effective way of calling it out. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is I think this question of exactly how do you bundle it, where is it housed, is not going to be solved right now. But there is a next step, which is put it together so it can be seen. And the discussion needs to continue. Are task force members okay with that and sort of putting a pin in this with the knowledge it will come back?
And if I could just give feedback really quick, I agree with James on this one.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Camille, I just wanted clarification. Are you guys you're gonna work to kind of compile all the, what was it that you were gonna do? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Irene. Tessa, feel free to jump in, and Megan too. I wasn't in one of the subcommittee meetings where this was discussed. There was a request for staff to go through the report and pull out any new entities, new programs, new like expansions on what currently exists, and to put them together so the task force could consider them as a package of ideas. And then with the ultimate goal of creating a package that was effective. Does that make sense, Irene?
Entities that exist inside of the report?
Yeah,
like
sorry,
ideas?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Ideas that don't yet exist.
Yeah.
But
okay,
are being built through the report. Did that clarify?
Great. That's what I was
sorry for the confusion.
So for example, we are advancing the Ag Ombuds idea into the report, but then this one we're not, and we're going to keep it outside as for further discussion. Is that correct?
That is my understanding of this conversation today, but I think having you all confirm that understanding is very valuable.
That's fine with me. I personally think this department it's difficult to make it happen, but I'm open to discussing it.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think what would be great too is to maybe, because I know we sort of broke it down to different ideas with or different scenarios with Caleb and Ruth in the work group, in the past work group. But maybe now kind of dissecting, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a whole entire department, right? A Department of Agricultural Equity. But definitely, I mean, I think we see a need for some sort of entity that would do some kind of weaving together or oversight, streamlining, And I mean, this is something that I know has been mentioned, could be an expansion of CDFA, but then there are some issues that have been identified there within the Department of CDFA, and maybe this isn't fitting, especially when it comes to like cooperative development and whatnot. But definitely that's even a great option, right? It just might not fulfill everything that we want. And then, I mean, there's the CNRA, the California Natural Resource Agency, or the Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation. So I would just hate for us to be maybe like intimidated by the creation of a whole big department, but maybe just making sure we at least establish whether it's kind of like an advisory kind of council or some kind of a oversight committee that makes sure and sort of I don't know, just sort of like we were mentioning with the ombuds, like keeping track of what the work that's being done, the needs that are out there, right? And sort of threading all of this together so that we can maybe create something in the future, right? But
Thanks for that, Irene.
Great. Well, I think it's been said a couple of times. We're gonna do our best to do some of that weaving of all the different ideas in the report, and then come back to you, and then we can kind of reopen this conversation about what the best package is. For now, I think we need to move on. And that is about another very small topic called CEQA. And we just wanted to bring this back up because it was, relevant to goal 4. And I think the question here is if you all want to move these ideas into the report, and, if so, given the kind of limited time here, if there's a champion who wants to work on refining this language.
I feel like I would nominate James for that if he were willing. Because I feel like I don't run into CEQA as much in the San Joaquin Valley in this way.
Well, wasn't everyone like like I thought this got like blasted by everyone's like no, don't. I mean, look, I have a long list of like both underserved and tribal communities that have had to deal with CEQA in a way that creates huge burdens around, because CEQA essentially can be used, like anybody can create a cause of action under CEQA to stop a project from happening. And I think so, yeah, I mean, the opposition to streamlining was like like I heard everybody loud and clear. But I do think that like there are tons of examples where CEQA's compliance has made it impossible for people to get projects done. And so like I think just the way that we're encouraging like making carve outs for priority producers, that we do so with CEQA. And I'm happy to take another stab at the language, but I'm not sure there's actually like an appetite for approval on the task force.
So I think then that kind of leaves the decision up to you, James. Do you want to keep working on this language and propose it in October? Or do you want to just kind of let it go?
I'm happy to work on it, but I think the language itself isn't the issue. It's like contextually understanding that like a lot of like rich NIMBY people use CEQA to prevent like community projects from being developed, or from like changing, like people will use the environmental protection aspect of CEQA to like prevent people from doing things.
Could I make a suggestion? Could we ask James to present that context at the next meeting, or is there a way to kind of, so I think task force members might not all know the details of that, and maybe it would be nice to present them with those cases and scenarios of how CEQA might be used unintentionally and see what they think after having that information. Like I think it's worth, I really want to support regulatory good fit, like I think it's an important time to talk about that and to make regulations function the way they're supposed to.
Mhm.
So I personally would like to learn more about that. So I don't know if there's room for that at the next meeting, or I don't know if you want to do that, James. I just volunteered you, but I would like to know more about those kinds of scenarios. And I think it would be helpful for other people to hear that too.
If you're willing, James, we can work with you on that. I think there was some very specific feedback about why streamlining was not a good word to use. So we can, go back to the notes and go back to those conversations and work with you on an update if you wish to do that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I mean, yeah. I mean, just doing the environmental impact report can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes. And that's like who can pay that? Like
Yeah.
Or
All
if
right.
there's other potential speakers, James, that deal with that you have in mind. I mean, it might be interesting to hear about.
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to connect with staff between now and then and like, give me deadlines, please. I know you guys are good at that, but give me some
Great.
deadlines and I'll put some things together to share out. I don't really want to like present anything at the next meeting myself. Like that feels a little weird, but I'm happy to like relay a bunch of information that we can all look at and talk about or something like that and give some framing language. Or find somebody who can come in and talk about it too. Yeah.
We can follow up with you, I think, one-on-one on that. And I think we got to go to the next slide now. 2 slides, actually. Yeah, there you go. Next one, Megan. We just talked about that. So, we did not get back to this conversation. How are you feeling, Megan, Camille, about these questions and task force members?
I think it's a question, so it's 3:57 on Friday, everyone. And I think these are very honestly big questions that need to be addressed for each goal. So I'm wondering whether there are any immediate things that people are currently feeling they'd like to get out on the record, or what is the best way to ask these questions and when? So is this just a question that is going to be considered across the board, that report everyone wants to take up in October? Or do you feel that it would be important to again meet as a goal for subcommittee and come back to these ideas? That's, I think, the question.
Nothing immediately coming up. Go ahead, James.
What was the question again? Sorry, I'm pretty fried.
I
The
think
answer is
so.
no.
Right, Friday afternoon at 4
That's a
o'clock.
response.
Yeah.
So my question then back to the group is, do you feel like you made significant advancements in today's discussion that when we get back draft text to you in advance of October, that'll be enough? Or do you want to meet again before October to review draft text before you decide what to put forward to the larger group?
I feel pretty good about what we talked about. There's a couple of little things that I think maybe if staff really felt like there was a lot of clarity needed, then meeting again would make sense. I'm open to it. It seems like it'll help. This is the home stretch. So like I feel good about what we talked about. And I think doing it again can't hurt. We can really just make sure everyone's clear about everything and that we can talk about it collectively at the next all in person. But I do like what we did. I thought we made a lot of progress.
Yeah, I'm fine either way. I see Irene wants to meet again, and I'm fine to do that.
Maybe we search for just 1 hour.
Yeah, I think it doesn't need to be 2 hours. I think even like 45 minutes could be all right.
I'll propose an hour just because of all the admin stuff, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we end early, great. Sure. But yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so we're gonna look for 1 hour the week of September 22nd. So I will ping everyone with an email and send me your availability that week in whatever fashion works best for you, screenshot, bulleted list, whatever. And we will look for an hour the week of September 22nd. Okay. May, if you are interested in a public comment, go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, I think we're rounding out. May, you are on. Well, actually, Tessa has to unmute you.
Mute, stay as attendee.
Okay.
Hi, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi. Yeah, not much of a comment, just saying hi and thanks for, yeah, having a avenue for folks to join. And I've enjoyed listening in on y'all's sessions for this week and will continue to do so if that's not weird for everybody. And yeah, I don't have any suggestions. I'm not going to pretend that I am an expert amongst this panel of experts. So thanks again. And also, hi, Leah. Good to hear your voice. And happy Friday, everybody.
Thanks, May. Thanks for going on this journey with us. Just so other task force members are aware, additional meetings have been set by the other subcommittees who met earlier this week. Goal 1 is actually a reschedule due to a scheduling conflict, so they haven't met yet, but they will meet for the first time September 16th, 10 to 12. Goal 3, Part 2 is September 17th, 3 to 5. Goal 2, Part 2, September 19th, 9 to 11. And Restorative Land Subcommittee met this morning and would also like to meet a second time. We're exploring options the same week, so September 22nd. So to be confirmed. And then you got full task force meeting October 15th and 16th. So enjoy your weekend because you certainly earned it, and it's going to be fast and furious in the coming weeks as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everyone.
Happy
Thank you
weekend.
all.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
I'm gonna stop the recording.